Do you ever wonder how those guitarists you see can bounce effortlessly up and down the fretboard or seem to have this crazy stretching ability to their fingers? Well, it's all rooted in some really simple exercises. And this video is going to show you how we can take those exercises and apply them into your practice routine. It doesn't matter if you're a complete beginner or you've been playing for decades. They're designed to be played slow and accessible for all levels. Hey everyone, I hope you're doing good. So let's jump straight in and look at how we can learn some exercises that are going to really help kick on your finger independence, strength, stretching capabilities, and the speed you're able to play at. So our first one, we're going to have 4 fingers covering 4 frets. We're going to start from our 1st to our 4th fret. If this is a little bit far for you, if the stretching is a bit harder there, move up the neck, because the further you move up the fretboard, the closer these frets come together. So if you wanted to start at the 5th or the 10th or the 12th even, you can. But I'd recommend try and start on the 1st. So we're just going to make sure our 1st finger is tucked nicely behind that 1st fret. And we're just doing a 1, 2, 3, 4. Each finger plays 1 fret at a time, and we alternate. So our picking hand is doing a down, up, down, up. We want consistency, we want a clear tone with every note that we play. Once we've played those 4, shift to your next 4. Continue that all the way up the neck. When, depending on how many frets you've got, you might be left with 1 at the end. If you are, just shift that little finger for when you reverse the exercise. Start to make your way back down and then end on that 1st finger. So let's try and play that pretty slow to begin with, but again, creating that consistency with each note that we pick out. This time, really focus on, once you finish those first block of 4, our 1st finger wants to get to that next fret in a consistent amount of time. We don't want to be leaving a big gap between that 4 and the next 4. Try and keep that continuity, that movement flowing. A different way we can approach the end of that exercise is, once we've got to the top, our 1st finger can jump to whatever that last fret is, and then our little finger has to roll back to start that block of 4 working its way back down. See that again? It's a great way of working on the speed and independence of that finger there, throwing in another little variation, another little exercise to take our ability a little bit further. Really important to get that jump up to that highest fret and then back. You could make that a little exercise in itself. Level 2, progression of this exercise. Start to do it on different strings as you go up. There we go, lovely simple one to get us up and running, but it's in your hands if you want to take that further and make it more complicated and intricate by working up the strings as you work up the neck and throwing that little shift with the 1st and little finger alternation when you get right to the top of the neck. It's really important that you start slow with these exercises. We're not looking to rush. We want to make sure every note's coming through crystal clear. We're looking to perfect technique here, not just show off and be really fancy with loads of speed and loads of flair to our playing. It's not about that. Practice really is rooted in that initial slow playing. Gradually develop that technique. Applying the right foundations very early on is really going to help you develop a crystal clear, beautiful, well-rounded playing technique. Right, let's take this a little bit further with this next exercise that focuses a lot on independence and our stretching capabilities. Instead of working along 1 string, we are going to cover 4 frets but work down the strings. You can already see what this is going to do to our hands. Really start to fan those fingers out and make us think in a bit of a different way. And when we get to the top, we notice we've got that 1 fret. We can bring our 1st finger down so we can work our way back up the strings with our little finger. This time would land onto that highest fret. For me, that is the 18th when I'm working my way back down. That might be different for you. And I've had some people, when they get to that highest point, So it becomes quite confusing to know where your starting point is as you're shifting those fingers back. It's very easy to lose the reference of where you finished and where you need to start again. So depending on what fret you're starting this progression on, log that number. Say to yourself, so for me, I know that's 18. I'm working down 4, so I want to get to the 14th fret. We're starting to tag those frets and get more familiar with them. I'm going to jump down another 4. I want to get to the 10th. And then the 6th, 2nd, and then we end on that 1st to start again. So I've mentioned already about playing slow. That's so relevant to this exercise. Make sure every note comes through clear. Our thumb is nice and central at the back. We're not bringing it too far over because that's going to restrict our movement. We want to be able to fan our fingers out, so don't let that thumb stop that from happening. And just if you need to do the first 4 for a little while, just to get used to that, that's fine. When you're comfortable, move up. And as you start to flow a little bit more, go all the way. Remember to count those numbers if you need to. 6, 2, and then 1. Now to make that even trickier, when you're ready, let's start to alternate the direction that we go with that pattern. So start going up and then work your way back down. Another good way of tagging those frets, getting used to where we need to be. You can really start to see how that's going to complement your playing so well. It's beautiful. Once you get in a flow with that, it feels great. Final point on this one, it's really good for building that strength in our 3rd and particularly 4th fingers. You can see when we start to do things like power chords, that little finger's going to want to come off sometimes and play little extensions, give us some variety to what we're doing. Well, by doing an exercise like this, you're getting used to that 4th finger having to work very independently and still remaining strong. Let's throw one in now that really focuses on stretching our fingers. We're going to go back to our 1st fret. To mix things up a little bit, this time go to your A string and we're going to play 1, 2 with our 1st and 2nd finger. Then we go back to 1, but our 2nd finger comes across to 3. And I want to quickly stop here and stress, do not overdo it with exercises like this. All of them, but in particular this one. If you feel too much strain on your fingers when you're trying to do that stretch, relax, stop, give yourself a break. You don't want to create repetitive strain in your hands. It's a nightmare. It could take a while to get over. If that first position is too much, move up to the 5th, 7th, 9th, wherever you feel more comfortable, and you're still developing technique, but you're not overdoing it. So back to that 1, 2, 1, 3, if you're comfortable. Nice and slow. Still looking for that clear tone. Alternating the picking with our picking hand, that down, up. Once we've done 1, 2, do 2, 3. And then over to 4. Really trying to get close to that fret. You can see how it's going to do wonders for stretching those fingers. And then 3, 4. 3, 5. And you notice how I've kept all my other fingers down while I'm doing this. We're training them to stay on the string, on the frets we're playing, and it's also giving us more stability there, allowing us to apply the pressure that we need. Let's move that up. Once you've done those block of 4, do the next block of 4. If we go right up the fretboard to say the 12th, you might be able to stretch even further with each finger. Again, not overdoing it. And back. Can your 3rd finger go a couple? Lovely. And the little. Next up, we're going to play a scale. We're going to play a major scale on 1 string. And why do we play on one string instead of just a scale shape that you might already know? Well, it's brilliant to have shapes. Obviously, they're great. They're really good for building foundations with our playing early on. It helps us become familiar with a lot of the fretboard, but sometimes we can just become too familiar with that shape. We learn the scale shape, but we might not really learn the scale. By pulling it apart, what appears to be simplifying it, putting on one string, actually makes us become more familiar with those intervals that need to be put in place to create something like a major scale. For those of you that don't know, a major scale is consisted of the intervals whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So if we built that with our open E string, we go a whole tone to jump to our F sharp, another whole goes to G sharp, a half goes to A, a whole tone jump to B, another whole to C sharp, another whole tone to D sharp, and then we jump a half tone to E. Great to play it as a shape, but we learn so much more by having to make our brains think about that one string. And we're working on shifting as well, because we have to work a lot further up that fretboard rather than being confined just to a 4-fret area. So then apply that to another string, that same whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Let's start on the D string. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. We have the D major scale. And you can apply that to every open string. So do this with your practice. When you're applying these exercises into your practice routine, don't just do the same string and the same scale every day. Don't practice in exactly the same position. Mix up the order, because that is going to make you think more creatively and train your brain in a variety of ways as well. To level this up even more, try playing this with one finger. Again, thinking about shifting, thinking about having to get our first finger from one place to another when it usually wouldn't have to. It'd have our second, third or fourth finger to help it out there. But our first finger's got to do it all. Locking more of that scaling, locking more of that ability to be able to jump around and be a bit more free and flexible with our playing. Then think of that with two fingers. See, it does something different to our stretch again. 3. And when I'm doing this, if our third finger ends up on the D sharp at the 11th fret, throw our first finger up to start that again, to start that scale again, because then our first finger has to travel. We want to keep that consistency. It's got quite a distance to move. We don't want to lose the interval, the timing. But we're having to move another shape. We're having to think differently. Always training our hands in a variety of ways. It's really important. All together. 2. Three. And back to using 4 fingers to cover 4 frets. Exercise number 5 for you to try and implement to your practice routine. Really good one for speed, this, and we have to shift very far up and down the fretboard. We're going to jump from the first fret, which is an F note, to the next F that we find on that same string, which occurs on the 13th fret of the E. F, F. Stopping the notes in between, so we get that little shift. Trying to be nice and consistent. Now we're starting this free from any rigid tempo, but we are going to apply the metronome in a bit. But let's not put too much pressure on ourselves just yet. Let's get up and running and then we'll have a look at that. Now don't start this 1 and 13 too fast, because we want to fill the gaps in between with some extra notes. So let's go 1, 2, 13, 14. See, I'm trying to keep that timing that I had when it was just 1 and 13. Let's add another. And another. See how quite quickly what started off as a really slow and simple exercise starts to get quite on edge. But we don't want that pressure to put us off. We don't want to start losing the consistency and the clarity with the notes we're creating. We're just looking to gradually build and push our technique and playing ability. And again, we can apply this to different strings. Okay, so now we've done that as a little warm-up. Let's put the metronome on. I'm going to start at 60 BPM. For those of you who don't know, it's 60 beats per minute. We're using a metronome, which means we're going to have this syncopated, consistent time, which is going to create a backbone for us to play along to. It's going to hold us to account. We can't miss a beat. Well, we can, but we just won't be playing on the beat that we want to play. For the purpose of this exercise, we want to be as consistent as possible. So I'm going to play this at 60 BPM, and I'm going to start the 1 and the 13 on that beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just get ourselves started. And then fill the gap. See what that does? Suddenly there's no room to hide. We have to be back on that starting point. It's okay when it's 1, 2, or even 1, 2, 3, but as soon as you put that 1, 2, 3, 4, 13, 14, 15, 16, it can really push you. But you can just see what that would do to your technique. It's brilliant, man. It's a wonderful thing to practice. So I encourage you to have a go at that. Let's take that a little bit further. I'm going to start on my lowest E, and then I'm going to work up the strings. I'm going to give myself a minute to get into the flow, play around that low E string a couple of times. But once I've finished that pattern, I'm going to jump to the A and then work my way up the strings. Don't rush it. Get yourself ready. 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you for watching through all of that. If you did, not the most pleasant sounding exercise in the world because it's chromatic. It can sound a little bit harsh at times, but in terms of just developing your playing ability, it does wonders. Now, as you begin to get comfortable around that speed, if it is 60 BPM you've started at, don't worry if you want to start slower as well. You can go a lot slower than that if you need to. But as you're getting comfortable in whatever BPM is your starting point, just add 2 BPM, not straight away, but maybe each day or once every 2 or 3 days after you've practiced that regularly, just boost it a couple of BPM. You might not notice it too much, but before you know it, you would have gone up another 10, 16, 20 BPM, and you'll really start to see how much you're kicking on. Record yourself as well. It's another big thing. So you get an even better reference. Really see and hear how much you're developing. As a quick example, let's see how much it really pushes you if you stick another 10 on top and boost it to 70. Really see how that's going to help you kick on. Try to implement these into your practice routine, however often that routine is. They're a good little exercise to do just before you go to bed. It's a good thing to do if you're on stage warming up about to play a gig. And change the structure of these. Don't feel like you have to play these exercises in order. Don't feel like you have to do one string after the other, E, A, D, G, B, E. Jump from the E to the D string. Play the 5th exercise first and then do exercise number 1. Always look for these opportunities where you can chop, change, merge things together, because that's always going to keep your brain ticking over and thinking in fresh ways, which is only going to continue to improve the abilities of our left and right hand. If you want to make scales seem a bit more interesting, so you're not just running through a formal scale shape up and down, then check out this video where we throw in a few variations and different tips and ideas of how you can approach them. Big thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll hopefully see you in another video again soon. Take care.